glad you're watching the Weekend Express. Moving on to our interview segment now, still keeping with matters Kericho and Malindi senatorial by-elections. And like I promised, we would be having expert analysis right here in studio. And joining us now is political commentator Dismas Mukua. Yeah. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us in studio. So we'll be speaking to Dismas about that Kericho by-election and the Malindi by-elections. Of course, what's at stake. And
it's a big stakes game.
Yeah, definitely a big stakes game. Yeah. But last night, the candidates for the senatorial by-election in Kericho had a debate in a last-minute rush to convince voters in Kericho to vote for them. Joining us in the studio to talk more about this is political commentator Dismas Mukua. We'll be speaking in detail about the Kericho and Malindi senatorial by-elections, but let's just get your take first of all. How would you rate the capacity of the candidates in the senatorial debate in Kericho in answering the questions raised by the citizens?
Well, you know, without being politically correct, Michelle, the performance is underwhelming. I mean, and I say this with humility and respect. For instance, the question posed by Kitili about the role of a senator in Kenya. None of those three candidates really knows what they're going to be doing at the Senate. And I doubt whether the missing candidates would actually know what they're doing, they'll be doing at the Senate as well. So for me, I think really the tragedy we have in Kenya is people are supposed to run for elective offices. For some reason, they decided to go and take cover behind a bush and leave mediocrity to come to the top. Because if the people of Kericho are going to elect somebody to the Senate, who clearly does not understand the role of the Senate. You see, they're talking about issues that are supposed to be presided over by the national government. And the question posed about how, as a senator, they may assist in revamping the tea sector, all of them are tiptoeing around the issue. Nobody really understands. Probably, as a nation, we shouldn't be surprised that our age mates or our peers like South Korea and Singapore are miles ahead because we don't have leadership that is able to join the dots. Out of all those three candidates, none is able to see the four corners in a room. All of them are tiptoeing around issues. Probably that's the reason why when they go to the Senate, their priority is to get a car loan and maybe get a mortgage and start accumulating wealth. There is lack of intellectual leadership. From what I have seen, they don't have any intellectual curiosity. Like, for instance, when you're talking about the tea situation, and one would expect anybody who stays in Kericho to have a very deep understanding of tea.
Yeah. Of tea.
I mean, I would have expected them to say that which are the other tea producing countries? How have they managed their space to ensure that the farmer gets the high return on tea?
Instead, they have the same song everybody sings. When you elect me, I promise you that I will do this and this.
Yeah, but we see today the voter, probably a voter in Kericho wants to be told that when I become senator, I'll hit the ground running. That am I going to work with the national government? Am I going to work with the county government to ensure that we reduce the inputs, the cost of inputs to the tea sector, so that we get a higher return? And you know, the tea sector in Kenya, just like coffee, has been strangled by special cartels. So I expected these candidates to talk about how they're going to work with the national government and the county governments to make sure that these middlemen, the cartels, are, you know, kicked out of the entire chain. But you see what they're doing? They're just tiptoeing around the issues. And this is not only confined to Kericho. It's probably countrywide. Save for a few senators like, say, Professor Lonyangopuo, Senator Wetangula, Boni Khalwale. Majority of them really are just wallowing in ignorance. And it's unfortunate that we are on autopilot today.
Right. But you see, even we had one of the residents there ask a question with regard to the devolution of funds to the county governments. That is not the role of the senator. So it seems that the residents themselves and the voters in Kenya don't understand what their leaders should be bringing to the table.
You know, the tragedy is when we were passing this constitution some time ago, majority of us said that if, say, Mr. Raila Odinga or Mr. William Ruto or Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, if they've gone through the constitution and they're okay with this, then we'll follow whatever they tell us. That's the tragedy. Most of us, up to 90%, have not been able to socialize with the Kenyan constitution. So we do not even know the difference between the Senate and the National Assembly. Majority of us do not even know that all members of the National Assembly and the Senate are members of Parliament. So we keep on confusing.
Yes.
So really, it's it's ignorance galore in Kenya, and really, it's a tragedy today, with you know, the digital world that we are in, that voters do not understand the role of a senator and a member of the National Assembly. But now it's a disaster when people who are running for that office do not understand the job description.
Themselves, absolutely. Now, JAP candidate Aaron Cheruiyot did not show up for that particular debate, did not honor the call to show up for the debate. Do you think this could be part of the rivalry that's going on between the Jubilee Alliance Party and KANU?
Well, in a normal democratic setting, when you're running for a particular office, you're supposed to use this opportunity to come and market yourself, to come and show to the voter that indeed I've got the infrastructure necessary for me, I mean, for you to elect me to the Senate. But the fact that he decided to duck would be a pointer to the fact that he's in the same boat.
Category.
He's in the same category. He does not understand the issues. So he feared that if he faces this kind of a panel, he'll live with a very bad egg on his face. But again, it's important for us to realize that the other two guys there, that was, apart from Mr. Paul Sang, the other two guys, they're part of the escort because they don't stand a chance of
well, it's a two-horse race,
yeah,
definitely.
It's a And the people who are running for this seat, in fact, contrary to popular belief, it's not Mr. Aaron Cheruiyot and Mr. Paul Sang. This is between Mr. Gideon Moi and the DP William Ruto. So these two gentlemen, they're just pawns. You even notice that during the campaigns, the person who gets a lot of airtime, the person who is doing the actual campaign is Governor Isaac Ruto and Mr. Gideon Moi for Paul Sang. And then the DP Ruto, Murkomen, Kithure Kindiki, they're the ones who are doing the campaigns for Mr. Cheruiyot. So I'll not be surprised today that if you go to the Nairobi streets and ask folks, do you know that there is a by-election in Kericho? They'll say yes. But do you know the candidates who are running? Probably they'll say no. But do you know who's been campaigning? They'll say, of course, yes. We've seen Governor Ruto talking about Kutenga. We've seen about the DP Ruto talking about Abunuasi and Vitendawili. And this is really a race between the DP Ruto and Governor Ruto. And looking at the probabilities, in the unlikely event that Mr. Paul Sang wins, then the DP Ruto will be bleeding, he'll be wounded, and they may need to go back to the drawing table and come up with a new strategy. Because the way it happens in Rift Valley politics, right now people are testing waters. And in the event that the DP Ruto's candidate wins, that's Mr. Cheruiyot, then everybody wants to run for a seat, be it an MCA, MP, or governor. They'll know that if you do not work with DP Ruto, you are a chapter in history books. Right. So he's going to instill the fear of the Lord in the entire Rift Valley, the former Rift Valley province. But in the event that Mr. Sang wins, then it becomes an entirely different ballgame. Because all of a sudden, Gideon Moi and Ruto, now Governor Ruto, will become the new kingpins. And anybody who is running for office, they'll say, okay, we've seen what has happened to Cheruiyot. We have to toe the line of Mr. Moi and Mr. Governor Ruto. And so this is going to be very important. And every Kenyan is watching it. And if you want to draw parallels, ask yourself, if this by-election was taking place, say, in Murang'a or Nyeri, would President Kenyatta make up to 9 trips going to Nyeri to campaign? When there was a by-election in Kabete, for Mr. Waititu, I did not see President Kenyatta doing the campaign. But for Kericho, I've seen the DP has marshaled all the resources. Murkomen and Kampan, all of them are spending sleepless nights in Kericho because they know that this is high stakes. And the same is the case in Malindi. Because again, you've seen the DP very active, doing campaigns, now resorting, almost going to door, pleading with voters. And these two by-elections, especially the one for Kericho, will determine his political career. If he wins, you can be sure that all the MPs who've not been dancing to his beats are going to be shedding blood.
Right.
But on the contrary, if he loses, then even President Kenyatta may want to reevaluate his association with him.
Okay. Now, there's been a lot of leaders defecting from the Jubilee Alliance Party to KANU, and there's also been word of maybe a plot to destabilize the Jubilee Alliance Party by KANU itself. Is that really going on?
Well, I don't think it's a plot to destabilize Jubilee. Because really, when you look at it realistically, there's no Jubilee. We have a President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and the Deputy President William Ruto. It's not as if we have a political party called Jubilee or URP or TNA. It's really these two personalities. And what is happening today to DP Ruto is what he did a few years ago. When retired President Moi was the kingpin of Rift Valley province, he was able to sneak in and, rattled the entire political landscape, and he became the Supremo. And of course, retired President Moi was very disappointed, and his son is equally disappointed. I think now this is the opportunity that Mr. Gideon Moi is taking to flex his muscles, to remind him that, you know what, you came to what was, in quotes, our space, you invaded our space, we want to teach you a lesson. And I don't think the DP Ruto should be complaining about anybody trying to create, you know, an alternative voice in Kericho. That's what democracy is all about. The DP needs to go and take his message to the voters, hoping they'll understand what he talks about. And also Gideon Moi and Isaac Ruto deliver their message. And then Wanjiku, maybe in that case, Chebet will take a decision on who is supposed to go to office. But again, looking at it at a global context, this would actually be a vote of confidence in DP Ruto on how he's run. Because you realize Isaac Ruto has been saying that a number of promises were made, and the voters are of the view that they have not been, the promises have not been honored. So maybe it would be a vote of confidence.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to Malindi now. The Malindi senatorial by-election also being held on March 7th, and we've seen very intense election campaigns going on there. Like you mentioned, Deputy President William Ruto himself is also down at the coast. But yesterday, Raila Odinga was leading a delegation of CORD leaders to a police station to petition for the release of an MCA, Hassan Kojo, who was arrested on alleged electoral malpractices. So he was arrested for that. So electoral malpractices are already coming up in this senatorial by-election. Raila himself has accused the Jubilee Alliance Party of using Waiguru before to steal money from the government to use in these particular by-elections. What's your take on that?
Well, again, you know, Malindi is an interesting case because of Mr. Kazungu. And you know, there's a section of Kenyans that blame President Kenyatta for appointing Kazungu to the cabinet, hence occasioning a by-election. I think really that's a mistake, because the president has got a discretion that if you identify a talent somewhere, then you tap that talent to come to the cabinet. Say for some reason the president thinks you can work in the cabinet to replace you know, cabinet secretary, is at liberty, whether or not you come from, say, Rift Valley or Central, wherever it is. But what really intrigues Raila Odinga is that if he loses this seat, again, the by-election has got nothing to do with the two candidates. Nobody even knows their names. This one, again, is between Jubilee and actually between Ruto once more and Raila. If Raila loses this, then the person who will be very nervous would be Governor Amason Kingi and Governor Joho, because I think they've abandoned their offices and they're spending all the time and resources in that part of the world. So in the event that the Jubilee candidate wins, then Mungaro will have a swagger, because he'll say, I'm the one who led this campaign, of course with support from Mr. Ruto. And that will give the Jubilee party new blood. They will be very excited if they take over. But again, you know, from the opinion polls and statistics, it says that a probability of Jubilee winning is tending to 0, and CORD is going to win the Malindi seat. I mean,
Malindi is a CORD stronghold.
Yeah, it's a CORD stronghold. But again, you know, by-elections tend to be very funny. Number one, they're characterized by very low voter turnout. And there's what going around that there's a lot of resources, as you've indicated. Mr. Raila Odinga has claimed that the government is using a lot of resources, using the form of provincial administration to make sure that voters are going to vote in one particular direction. But in the event that Raila loses that seat, then his position as the CORD leader will become very shaky.
Right. Now, the country is focusing a lot on these two by-elections, Kericho and Malindi. So let's talk about the bigger picture and why Kenyans really should be interested in how this turns out. So why are these two by-elections crucial?
Well, you know, these two by-elections are going to create momentum. I mean, you know, we are just about 1.5 years away from the next election. So these two by-elections are going to create momentum, especially on Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, and Senator Wetangula from CORD. Because again, you know, there is a conversation going on that people are increasingly getting tired of Mr. Raila Odinga. That when you mention Raila Odinga to an average Kenyan, they start yawning. That, you know, he's been around the block for a long time, and people are looking for a breath of fresh air. So there's a probability that, you know, Raila and Kalonzo have spent all their time in the coast, in Malindi, doing these campaigns, doing endless trips. There's a chance that if Mr. Raila Odinga loses that seat, because it's not his candidate who is going to lose, it will be him. If he loses that seat, then it may give people like Senator Wetangula maybe energy to say, why can't I be the court presidential candidate? Because Kenyans are now increasingly becoming tired of Raila Odinga. And you know the fact that he's lost many times. I mean, for people who are, say, around 12 years old, they know Raila as a perennial loser. So they may say, okay, why can't CORD come up with, say, Senator Wetangula or Kalonzo? But you see, that's why the reason why Kalonzo and Raila have spent all their time. And of course, if Jubilee wins, then Ruto will say, okay, apart from, because you know when Ruto was going to Jubilee, he went to the table with the Rift Valley votes. He said, I can deliver the entire Rift Valley. And if he's able to capture that seat, then when he's negotiating with President Kenyatta, he'll say, I cannot deliver sections of the coast. And that's how the mathematics is going to change.
All right. Now let's speak about voter registration. Because even before this by-election began, we had CORD leader Raila Odinga storm IEBC officers saying voter registration kits have not been supplied, especially to areas of opposition strongholds. And voter registration, of course, was an intensified campaign in Kericho and Malindi to get as many as possible voters to vote. But then again, you mentioned that the by-elections are marked by low voter turnout.
Yeah.
So with regard to the tyranny of numbers, how do you think that will play out in these by-elections?
Well, you know, the by-elections, really, it's up to the candidates to make sure that they do active mobilization. They need to give the voter a reason to come out. But right now, majority of Kenyans are really disappointed with the elected leaders. Because every single day, there is a scandal coming from either the National Assembly. You remember the Anti-Corruption Authority did a report about the scandals in the National Assembly. The way they fix the mileages, the way they're paid to pass motions or bills. And the Senate is seen as a group of people who don't have anything to do, as well as the executive with a lot of money are being stolen. So voters are really disappointed in Kenya. There could be voter apathy. But now it will depend on the charisma of the political leaders to tell these guys that actually you've got a stake. Because majority of voters in Kenya today do not care. They say whether or not you vote for, say, Raila or Kalonzo or Wetangula or Uhuru Kenyatta or Ruto, whatever administration is in place, they don't think about Wanjiku. They'll still engage in corruption. So guys may say, okay, we may just as well resign, stay back at home and do with the status quo. But I think the more important issue is now for the new voters, for the voter registration, to ensure that people come out. And that's why you've seen especially Senator Wetangula. He's been very active in Western Province, telling folks in Western Province, please come out and register. Because when you analyze the IBC results, sorry, the IBC statistics and the registration of persons, if the people are qualified to vote in Western Province, all of them register, then there'll be a ratio of 1:1 to the central Kenya vote. And that's the only way you're going to eliminate the tyranny of numbers. So that if there is 100, say, maximum voter turnout in Western Province and maximum turnout, voter turnout in Central Province, then you'll not have the tyranny of numbers coming to place. That's why you see even Mr. Raila Odinga, and I think that was in a lapse of judgment, when he told elected leaders to stop going to the National Assembly or Senate, to instead go and mobilize people to go and register. And I think that may have worked in Kajiado and Siaya, where people are really registering in numbers. But at the end of the day, you know, it's not even the responsibility of elected leaders to engage in voter education. It's supposed to be IBC. IBC is given a huge budget, and all they do is, you know, have coffee the entire day instead of doing massive voter education program.
You know, they actually doubled the number of voter registration kits that are being used. But yesterday they came out to say that they may not reach the target of 4 million registered voters, and they need more time because people simply aren't showing up to register. So if voter apathy really comes into play in these two by-elections, then that means we'll probably see the same thing in the general election, because nothing seems to change. We have scandal after scandal of graft that seems to even demotivate the voters even more. So what can be done?
Well, you know, for me, and part of the problem with DP Ruto and his campaign in Kericho is telling folks that Mr. Gideon Moi and Mr. Isaac Ruto are coming to rock the boat because they don't want me to become president 2022. The only reason why voters would come out in large numbers is if voters see themselves as shareholders in this body called Kenya, so that I know my vote counts. That when I go to vote, one, I'll get the right person going to all the political office, and when they go to office, they'll be serving my interest. But we see right now, majority of the elected leaders do not care about Wanjiku. They go to Parliament or the Senate or the county offices to acquire wealth. They don't go there to serve Wanjiku at all. I mean, that explains the reason as to why still, like folks in Kericho, that's why they get a very poor price for tea. If the leadership of Kericho was very serious, they would have had a Kamkunji in Kericho to say, how come our tea in Kericho gives us a much lower price compared to one, say, in Nyeri or Muranga? Then they address issues. But you see, majority of our elected leaders, as soon as they're sworn into office, they start looking for resources for the next campaign. That's why Kenya has been on a campaign mode. Right from the time Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta was sworn in as the president, we've been on campaign mode. So the only time we'll have voters really interested is when we know that your vote counts. And that's happening in the US today. Because like, for instance, in the US, majority of Republicans are so sick and tired of the Republican establishment. They've said, we cannot do business with Donald Trump because he's coming to rock the boat and he's speaking their language. But for us here in Kenya, all our politicians, it's just like a cabal, it's a cartel. During the political rallies, they'll make a lot of noise. Like say in Malindi, they're throwing barbs at each other.
A lot of promises.
Yeah, but in the evening when they meet at those five-star hotels, which you can bet your head, the accommodation in Malindi, they're not staying in a place where they're paying 300 bob a night. Absolutely, it's 5,000 upwards. And who is financing that? It's poor Wanjiku, who cannot afford a meal today. So that's the reason why Kenyans are really disturbed. And we really need to have a fundamental shift on the people we elect to office and say that we are going to elect somebody to office, not because he's given you, sugar or salt or given you a bit of money, but because he understands where Kenya is supposed to be in the future. And there's a deficit of that kind of leadership if the debate we saw last night is anything to go by. Right. Because you see, the purpose of a leader, it's assumed that when you are a leader, you are able to see so many things that your followers are not supposed to. You are supposed to be like a shepherd. You're supposed to lead your sheep in a particular direction. But majority of our leaders today are part of the sheep. So there is no shepherd. And Kenya is now, we are on autopilot. That's why our peers like South Korea and Singapore, I mean, I don't know whether you're alive to this fact that Singapore and South Korea, all the master plans they have, urban development plans, were designed by Kenyans. So they came, they adopted these systems adopted by Kenyans, implemented them in South Korea, and now they're in the first world. While our own Kenyans here, we're just swallowing in poverty. The same happens in Rwanda. It's the Kenyan talent which has developed Rwanda, even Botswana. When Kenyans go outside there, they really shine. But when you're around here, we get suffocated by these political leadership whose interest is not to grow the nation, but just to make sure that, as it's occurred to you, that the richest people in Kenya are not people who harness the factors of production. They do not, all these rich politicians, nobody runs a business. I mean, nobody runs, say, an M-Pesa agency to say that I buy airtime at this price and I get a commission, and these are my commissions over time. Or nobody tells you that I buy maize from point A and sell it to point B. This is how I made my money. All of them make money because of pinching Wanjiku's pass. These are incidences of corruption. And that's why we are wallowing in poverty.
Okay. All right, so I want us to talk more about the voter registration, and we'll be speaking also about the Chicken Gate scandal in just a bit. But this voter registration, as we finish up on that, let's talk about the campaign trends in Kenya. When election time nears, it's the same thing. We'll have political leaders brand their vehicles, brand their T-shirts, and come out and make seemingly empty promises. Tutatenga hii, tutafanya hii, jamaa wa kutenga vitendawili and whatnot. But like you mentioned, the voter needs to feel like their vote counts. So how would you maybe compare the campaign trends in Kenya and countries like you mentioned, South Korea and the US?
In other parts of the world, number one, to become a politician, you must not necessarily be rich. Well, like for instance, the guys who are running against Donald Trump, Marco Rubio, and Ted Cruz, they get funding from or donations from across the country. So you do not need to be very rich. But in Kenya, you need to be very rich for you to be able to run the show. However, in those parts of the world, people are held accountable to their word. You cannot be elected to office by just saying that I'm going to put up a bridge in some location, even if there is no river. So there's no need of a bridge, but you're making promises that you're going to put up a bridge. And that's part of the reason why we keep on talking about Singapore and South Korea. Those people who are elected into political office understand where the nation is and understand where the nation is supposed to be moving to. That's why you cannot be elected into office simply because you've got branded cars and you're doing campaigns around with choppers. So the other countries elect people based on principles. Like today, when you listen to the Republican debates, when they're saying whom they're going to elect to office, you're elected based on, say, policy issues. Somebody would say that we want minimal government in our lives. That's the Republicans. And then, the Democrats would say, in as much as we want minimal government, but there are some sectors of the economy that need a bit of regulation. So you're elected on your policy. Like, for instance, today Donald Trump is telling people that if you elect me as a president, I'm going to put up a big wall between the US and Mexico. And I'm even going to call it, Trump wall. So you're elected on tangibles. And if you do not deliver within a certain space of time, people will recall you. And then the electorate is generally well informed. They know what to expect from leaders. So people are voted into office based on their promises and what they can offer. In Kenya today, you'd probably have the best manifesto in the world, produced by top graduates from Oxford or Yale. But if you do not come from the right clan, or you're not a member of the right political party, you will not get into office. Look at somebody like Mr. Raphael Tuju. I mean, all facts are held constant. Raphael Tuju should be in Parliament today or in the National Assembly. He's got a very good track record of around development. But people in Rarieda don't care about development issues. They said, if you're not playing to Raila's tune, we don't care about you.
Right.
And a number of the people you've mentioned, like a majority of the MPs in Central Province, they would never move if they do not know the thinking of President Kenyatta. They don't stand on their own. The same happens to Rift Valley Province. That's why people are saying this MP called Oscar Sudi and MP Joanna Ngeno and Isaac Ruto are committing political suicide, because people are saying you hope to be re-elected and you're going against the DP. And that's our biggest tragedy. That number one, we don't have political parties anchored on any principles. Our political parties are based on personalities. That's why since independence, as you approach every election, there's a new political party coming up. Like during the last election, we had PNU, which was a special purpose vehicle for President Mwai Kibaki. And as soon as he took office, he didn't even pay attention to PNU. It just disintegrated. Now you have TNA, and TNA is synonymous with President Kenyatta. If President Kenyatta is not around today, TNA will just collapse, because the glue that is holding together TNA is President Kenyatta. The same is with the URP. In the absence of Mr. William Samoei Ruto, there is no URP. But now the reason you said why other economies move, it's because of very strong political parties. And a good example is down the road in South Africa. You have the African National Congress. Right now, President Zuma is in trouble from the membership, from the rank and file, because he's been told you are leading the ends in the wrong direction, and we may impeach you. And the same is happening with President Magufuli. Nobody knew about Magufuli as a presidential candidate till he was elected by the IEC decision-making organ. But as soon as CCM said, this is our candidate, he was voted in. And one hopes that one day in our generation in Kenya, we'll have political parties anchored on policies, not on personalities. Because you see, if you're a bright chap, say within ODM, you've got a very good position. If Mr. Raila Odinga is not agreeable to your position, it will go nowhere. You're going to lose your political seats. And Raphael Tuju is a guy that you can talk to, and he'll tell you that if your thinking is not consistent with Raila Odinga, you're going nowhere. And as a result, you've got very many bright minds, say within URP, who would have lovely ideas on how, say, to reduce the cost of one of the biggest issues that affect Rift Valley is the cost of maize production. That is very high, that it doesn't make commercial sense to engage in commercial farming as far as maize is concerned. And you can be sure there are so many bright minds within Rift Valley who can engage the DP in a conversation. But you see, they're not sure how the DP is going to take that kind of advice. So you keep on tiptoeing around issues, and as a result, what happens? The elected leaders, they resign to status quo and say, let me join the bandwagon, let me cut deals, let me go to NYS, let me go to other states parastatals, cut deals, get a bit of money, and wait for the next election.
All right. Okay. Now, away from that, even as the election campaigns heat up, election on Monday, there's also so many graft scandals going on. that have been going on since the beginning of last year, even before that. Now, the most recent that has been revived by the EACC is a Chickengate scandal, and another one that seems to be brewing in the Devolution Ministry is the issue of the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. This week, the EACC grilled officials from the fund over, is it about 400 million shillings that's missing. What can Kenyans do about these allegations of grafter coming in, day out, and new allegations of grafter coming up? How will this affect Kenyans with regard to voter apathy?
Well, you see, the biggest challenge you have as a nation is leadership. And I know the current administration, Jubilee administration, has actually gone the extra mile to ensure that the investigative agencies, that's the Directorate of Criminal Investigations under Mr. Ndegwa Muhoro, as well as the anti-corruption agency, have been given resources. But the people who work within those departments claim that the resources are not sufficient. You see, like for instance, one would have to imagine how the people at the anti-corruption agency and proceed on with the investigations, because there are cases coming in and day out, and the same happens to the youth fund. Even if you're running a very small business and you're two partners, there's no way you can have a single signatory in any account. And it's so disturbing that Mr. Bruce Odhiambo, who is a very close friend of the president, has betrayed the president's trust. And I think for me, some of these allegations must, because as we speak right now, nobody's actually sure that Bruce Odhiambo stole. But from the mood we saw at the peak meeting at the National Assembly, there's a very high probability that he stole resources. Now,
yeah, I mean, the EACC did ascertain that he indeed ensured that there was only one signatory to the money that was transferred to the company that seemingly did not do anything.
And again, the interesting thing is the company that got those resources transferred to the account, number one, has no contract with the fund. Number two, did not do any work. And as soon as the funds were disbursed, the company is now missing. You can actually, you can't tell who are the actual shareholders. Now, the reason why this affects the voter says, even if I don't go to vote, people will still steal. So why should I wake up early in the morning, say at 5 o'clock, go and queue? And Kericho is particularly cold. It's very cold in the morning, you queue, you elect somebody who goes to the National Assembly, and then instead of him working for your interest, he secures his own selfish interest. If you're a stakeholder, like say, if you're going to an AGM and there's going to be an election of new directors, and your vote counts, then you'll wake up early in the morning to go and vote. But if you know that whether or not I go and vote, the people you're going to elect, all of them are probably, they don't have the right intellectual infrastructure. So people may decide to sit at home. But from where I'm seated, I think President Kenyatta today has got that unique opportunity of demonstrating leadership in the fight against corruption. And the only time corruption in Kenya will come to an end is when you see a big shot behind bars. And we keep on saying that if you have one governor today, one MP, CS, PS, serving time at committee, then corruption will come to an end. An interesting scenario which comes to mind is General Buhari in Nigeria, the way he's been able to fight corruption. When he took office, he said, for me, corruption is not going to take place in my administration. And we discussed it the other day that the equivalent of Kenya Power and KenGen in Nigeria were not generating power for more than an hour in a day when Buhari took office.
Yes.
So he called the MDs of all those relevant parastatals to his office. He lost his cool, and the Sunday was jumping on top of tables, and he said, can you give me one reason as to why we don't have 24-hour power generation? And the guys were looking at each other in their eyes, and he said, I want you guys to go back, come back in a week, and tell me that this mess has been sorted out. As we speak now, Nigeria has got power almost 23 hours. And when Goodluck Jonathan was the president, it was only one hour
a day.
So when people sense that there is a change of leadership at the top, when the president doesn't allow people to betray his trust, people to joke around with Wanchinku's resources, then things will work out. And there's a very high chance that what you've heard of Chickengate, the NYS, as well as the Devolution Ministry, is just a tip of the iceberg. There'll be many other parastatals that are going to shock us, and which is the reason why the current parliament needs to look at these anti-corruption matters and come up with the legislation. And there's another school of opinion which says the penal code in Kenya is sufficient to manage the corruption cases. But maybe what we need to do as a nation is to make sure that the corruption cases work on a 24-hour basis. Like, for instance, Justice Mutunga has come up with a division of the High Court to deal with corruption. But I think that's the kind of court which requires to have even as many as 40 judges, maybe 100 magistrates, and these courts operate for 24 hours. So that if an MP or any public official is suspected of having stolen money, say if you steal money on Monday and evidence comes out on Tuesday, within 1 week, your matter has been heard and determined, and you're spending time in Shimolatewa or Kodiaga. That's the only way we'll be able to fight corruption. But right now, what happens when you steal money? Like, for instance, if I'm a public servant and I disappear with 400 million from the youth fund, when I go back to my village, I'm treated as a hero, as a celebrity. When I go to church, I'm given the front row. My local priest will recognize me. When I go to the bar in the evening, I'll get a standing ovation. And, you know, I'm treated as if I'm a hero. And which is why maybe in Kenya, again, because it's cultural issues, we should start treating entrepreneurs as heroes. You know, somebody like Mr. Sevi Malsha or Mr. Kosewe or Mamoliesh. Those are the people that we should start treating as celebrities. That when you see them walking around, we give them a standing ovation. But right now, what do we do? I mean, the other day I was very shocked for the major media houses in Kenya. The suspects in the NOI scandal are being given prime time to come and discuss issues, trying to sanitize themselves on national TV. So the incentive in Kenya today to steal is very high. Because what is the worst case scenario? If you're arrested in the morning, you'll go to the courts, and in the evening, you'll come out on bail. And then what will you do? You'll keep, if you get a lawyer who understands how the system works, you'll keep on adjourning the cases till you die of natural death at the age of 100, and you're enjoying the money stolen.
Okay. Thank you so much for speaking to us. That is Dismas Okua, political commentator, speaking to us in depth about the Kericho and Malindi by-elections. Of course, we'll be keeping a close eye on those with our KTN News crews in both Kericho and Malindi, just 2 days away to that by-election. Thank you so much for staying with us on the Weekend Express. My name is Michelle Ngele. Do enjoy the rest of your viewing.